I said that, you know, we're not going to give the Democrats any honeymoon. We don't need to give you a honeymoon. You have been with us. You have spoken out from the beginning, from the presidential primary debates, from putting initiatives to stop funding this illegal war. We are all very, very happy that you've agreed to come and speak to us tonight. And you're the one that, you know, when you need our help, we will be there with you, just as you have been there with us when we have needed your help. So thank you. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Congressman.
I want to thank each and every one of you for the commitment that animated your presence here today. I want to thank you for your service and your intent and your willingness to be able to extend yourself to make the emotional and the spiritual commitments of peace. One of the things that we all understand is that once we begin to focus on war, it carries with it a tremendous emotional drain. War has kind of a hypnotic effect. And just like the world in a hypnotic disc, that whirling can have a way of drawing you in. Each one of you knows what I'm talking about. Because as you begin to focus on war, you become more and more absorbed by the injustice, by the inhumanity. And it's a very difficult human experience. We can imagine what our brothers and sisters in Iraq go through. But they can also imagine, those of us who are so opposed to what's happening, the kind of angst that we suffer when we see every day the slaughter of innocents, when we see the treasure of our youth sent to battlefields for no legitimate purpose, when we see the waste of hundreds of billions of resources that are so sorely needed to lift up the lives of people here and to help people all over the world. And so I want to share with every one of you the imperative that while we are driven in our commitment to stop this war, that not any of us become so weighed down personally that it cripples our ability to be able to elevate this discussion of a war to the highest level possible, which is really, what kind of a world do we want?
Exactly.
What kind of a world do we aspire to? Do we aspire to a world where peace does reign? Do we aspire to a world where we understand that we are not simply our brother and sister's keeper, but we are, in fact, our brother and our sister, that we are all one? And it is this imperative. It is this imperative for human unity that my brother spoke about a moment ago that needs to be our highest calling in a recognition of why we do what we do. Because it's not simply enough to be against war. It's not simply enough to be against the violence that war represents. Because there is a higher level of commitment that we are called to. And at that highest level, we're called to a recognition that our activity confirms human unity. That war is not inevitable. That peace is inevitable if we open up our hearts, and in doing that, we open up the hearts of everyone with whom we come in contact. I'm involved in those debates right from the beginning, as you know. I led the effort in the House of Representatives in challenging the administration's march towards war in Iraq. I organized 125 Democrats who did vote against that Iraq war resolution. And when I saw that my party saw Party was failing to take a higher stand on this issue of the war, I entered the Democratic primaries as a candidate for president to make sure that the war was discussed throughout the United States. And I must say that one of the reasons why the Democrats lost the White House in 2004 is because they swept the war under the carpet again. And we cannot let that happen again. We must not let that happen again. We must call the Democratic Party to account. We must call them to account the American people. We must call them to account the votes that are coming up in the spring on the appropriations bill. We must call them to account the state in 2006 that we're about getting out of Iraq. Are you ready? Are you ready to take this nation back all across the United States? I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that because this is a moment for us to have some candid discussions about the politics of the war. We all know that the election of 2006 pivoted on the war. As a matter of fact, Speaker-designate Nancy Pelosi, and our new Speaker is someone who has voted against the war and opposed the war, but our Speaker, when we were going into the final weeks of the election, she said this election is about three things. Iraq, Iraq, Iraq. All over this country, it was abundantly clear that the Democrats, whether they talked about Iraq or not, were poised to win both the House and the Senate because the feelings of the American people have quickened about the war. The feelings of the American people have become much deeper about the nature of our involvement. And so as a result of that, the American people, not the party, but the people, created this political sea change. It's quite profound, really, that we were to take back the House and the Senate based on how the people felt about the war. And we all know this now. Now, things have changed. This is no longer about what George Bush's responsibility is. We understand that President Bush has made it abundantly clear that he has no intention of taking the troops out of Iraq. He has no intention of changing the policies that he advanced right at the beginning of his term: unilateralism, preemption, first strike. He has no intention of taking a different view in the world that suddenly abides by international law. He's been very clear about that. Let's suspend all the illusions that anyone may have still about what's possible with this administration. They're not going to leave Iraq.
Nail on the head, man.
And this Iraq study group is just window dressing. It's trying to buy time for a president who is in political trouble because of the war, but has no intention of changing his direction. But for those, good evening, class. Guess what? We have we have three branches in our government. And the first civic lesson that we need to make sure that we bring forward to this country again is that Congress is a co-equal branch of government. And the President had no intention of ending this war, but you know what? Congress has the power to end the war. Let me explain how. Because it's very important to know the background on this. In 1999, some of you will remember that the Clinton administration decided to attack Serbia, and they had to come back to Congress to get approval. And I was involved in that debate. I was also involved in the debate about whether or not the administration had unlawfully exercised the war power, took President Clinton to federal court, one of 26 members of Congress. I was a key sponsor on the Democratic side with Congressman Campbell from California. And in the case Campbell versus Clinton, the U.S. District Court decided that when Congress votes to appropriate funds for the war, or any war, that it gives implied consent for the war. So Congress really doesn't, on one hand, doesn't have any ability to tell the President how to conduct a war, But Congress cannot simultaneously say, look, we're opposed to the war, but still vote for the war. I want to follow this. Campbell v. Clinton. The doctrine is implied consent. If you vote for the war, you are implying consent to continue the war. There is only one way that we end the war right now with this Congress. Cut off the funds. Cut off the funds. Now let's talk about how that can happen. Let's talk about how that can happen. I want you to follow this. Since the beginning of the war, there's been about 6 major appropriations bills. Each time Congress voted on those appropriations bills, it voted to continue the war. Now you could go back and somebody can put up a court case and try to sue President Bush to stop the war. But you know what? That's going nowhere as long as Congress keeps appropriating funds. On September the 30th, Congress appropriated $70 billion in bridge funds, they're called, for the purpose of continuing the war. Those funds will continue the war through June the 30th of 2007. In the spring, Congress is coming, the administration will present a bill to the Congress. And that will be a bill for approximately $130 billion. And that money, by the way, that bill that proposal at this point, based on a letter that was circulated by an assistant Deputy Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of Defense, they're telling all branches of the service to essentially plus up their budgets. They're telling, and there's one in the last year, last fiscal year, we spent $117 billion in Iraq. Now you add $70 billion, that's for the fiscal year 07, plus another $130 billion, that's $200 billion, as compared to $117 billion in all of 2006. They want to spend $200 billion in 2007. Now, does that sound like an administration that's getting ready to get out of Iraq? No! Does that sound like an administration that's ready to send the troops home? No! Does that sound like an administration that suddenly has changed its worldview and is ready to say, let's now go back to creating in this nation a land of milk and honey? No! So we have to realize what's going on here. That the Congress, in the spring, is going to be asked for an appropriation to not only continue the war, but perhaps to expand the war, perhaps to give the government money to wage war in other places, perhaps to build up a slush fund on top of the already $400 billion a year, which the Pentagon gets. Everything we ever believed in is at stake here. So now all of us run into this. They're saying, well, what are you going to do? You're going to leave the troops stranded in the field if you cut off funds? Let me explain to you the answer to that. The answer is that right now, there is $70 billion in that pipeline. Right now, we can use that money to bring the troops home right now. The money's there to bring the troops home right now. Bring them home now. Bring them home now. Bring them home now. Bring them home now. Isn't it interesting? You know, when you have people who are out there who are saying, well, you know, I oppose the war, but I'm sorry, I got to keep funding it. I mean, think about it. You can oppose the war and you keep funding it so you can keep opposing it. And then you keep funding it and keep opposing it. Because we want candidates who will oppose the war. Let me tell you what's going to change this year, and you're going to help change it. And we're going to change it together. Because we're going to not just be the change, we're going to help to create the change that we want to see. In the spring of 2007, springtime in Washington is also going to be springtime for the peace movement in the United States. Because we can start right now. We can make that next appropriations bill the focal point of all of our activities. We need to start contacting every member of the House right now and every member of the Senate. And we need to remind the Democrats in particular why the people gave the Democrats control of the House and the Senate. We need to remind people that they can change the direction right now. We need to make sure that Congress understands the power that people put in Congress's hand, and we need to be there in Washington. The poet said, "Hope springs eternal in the heart of man, and spring is the hope that we will have for a beginning towards a vision that is, in fact, eternal." We are at a moment in human history where we actually have within our hands and within the power of our hearts to create the world as we envision it. Eternal. Where will our vision be? We are at a moment in human history. Will it be a vision within our hands of being on the treadmill to war because our society has been so militarized in its thought, word, and deed that we can't break free, that we're plunging headlong towards an abyss? Or will it be a vision of our society that comes from militarized in its thought, word, and deed, our fondest hopes that we can't break free, that we're plunging that comes from our understanding of the power of brotherhood and sisterhood? A vision. Will it be a vision that includes every person in the world? Will it be a vision that says that war is not inevitable, peace is inevitable, if we empower each other to connect with each other? Will it be a vision that understands, includes every person in our higher destiny? Will it be a vision that is to experience human unity, to confirm the power of interconnection and interdependence with each other? We're on an upward path here, my friends, because of our understanding. Our higher destiny of the utter hopelessness that war represents. We're on an upward path because of our willingness to stand up and put ourselves on the line here. Because of our understanding. We understand that we can create this new world. And this is a new world where, practically speaking, we're looking at the causes of violence. We're looking at violence as something in our society that we can actually work to change. We're looking at a real transformational power. We're looking at our ability to become more than we are and better than we are. We're looking at our ability to evolve. We're looking at our own approach that we can use in creating a cabinet-level Department of Peace to address issues of domestic violence, violence abuse, child abuse, violence in the school, racial violence. Violence penetrates our society, but that's not our home. Our home is a place of tranquility. Our home is a place of peace. Our home is a place where we can see our children be able to merge into the greater society with hope and expectations and happiness and joy. We're on a quest to lift up all of humanity. Our home is a place where we can see our children. We must always remember, merge into the greater society. That this really is a profoundly spiritual journey that we're on. And happiness and joy. And that it's about really connecting with the highest purpose of the human spirit. It's about connecting with people all over the world. And when our heart cries out in challenging war, it's because a mother in Iraq holds her dead child. When our heart cries out in challenging war, it's because a citizen in Iran is wondering if they're going to be next. When our heart cries out challenging war, it's because our brothers and sisters in Palestine and Israel are fearing the war. When our heart cries out challenging war, we have to be ready to be more than we are, and we are ready. We're ready to go forward. I'll see you in Washington. We're going to change this country. We're going to lift America up. We're going to free it from the chains of war. We're going to enable people to believe and hope once again. We're going to give us a chance to create absolute law and bring you to everyday experience as citizens of this country. Thank you very much.